So I would never lower prices. I would sell a new product for less. Let's try and make it $500. And then I made it $500 and I just made 25% more money. So that was great. And then I said, okay, let's make it $600. And then I made $600. And then suddenly that was too high and I started my conversion rate dropped. So I went back to 500 and I was happy. When we are doing pricing, we actually never start with pricing. We always start with packaging. So we always say, okay, so what is the outcome of the job to be done that you do for the market that they have demand for, right?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's session. This is Pricing 101, How to Know What You Should Charge, hosted by us at Augment, the online business school for entrepreneurs. My name is Alyssa. I'm the Chief Experience Officer here at Augment, and I am thrilled to be your host today. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, Augment is an online business school for entrepreneurs, as I just said. But we have built Augment to teach you the business essentials you need, from building an MVP and finding product market fit to sales, negotiation, financial accounting, and managing teams effectively through very flexible, practical lessons taught by top business minds. So this looks like instructors who are the founders and CEOs teaching courses based on their experiences building Waze, YouTube, Shazam, Lime, Wikipedia, and more. But today, we are incredibly excited to be joined by Ulrik Lerschov-Schmitz. Ulrik is the author of The Pricing Roadmap and the founder of Willingness to Pay, a boutique pricing consultancy trusted by giants like Microsoft, SAP, Intel, and dozens of scaling startups. He has redesigned pricing for over 150 B2B SaaS companies, helping them double prices without losing customers, structure offers that actually convert, and finally stop leaving money on the table. He's really the guy when it comes to making pricing work for your business, whether you are pre-revenue, preparing to scale, or just realizing it's time to charge more. So today, Ulrik's going to walk us through a smarter way to think about pricing, even though this is a really complex topic and we only have an hour together. But we want to talk about why most founders are undercharging, not because they lack data, but because they lack structure and a framework to think through some of these problems. So just wanted to say that before we get started. But Ulrik, welcome. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you.
And can you kick us off with a quick intro about yourself and how your work on helping businesses nail pricing began?
Sure. So it began by accident, but I think it began by me being a business owner. So I was sort of mid-late 20s, started my first business. It was within real estate media, but we built a lot of software in the backend. We built our own ERP system, basically. I sold that, then went on to having a food production company, did that, then did another business. And then I was sort of in the middle of starting my fourth business, I guess, when somebody invited me to co-write a book on pricing psychology. And I owed somebody a favor, so I had to say yes. And then I did that, and then people just started to ask me about pricing, and I just did not say no. And I think 2 years in, my wife said, "You're a consultant now." So no. But I was. And so that's close to 10 years ago. And then I started to take it seriously. So a couple of years in, I had become the preferred pricing partner for Microsoft Western Europe at that point. I was holding a lot of B2B sort of tech scale-ups and was having a lot of fun with it. So that's how it all began.
Wow, that is a really cool story. And I'm sure also encouraging for people who, do a lot of things and also kind of learn by doing and find their path through that as well. Why does pricing feel so hard, even for experienced founders?
So I think, first of all, is everybody knows that it's important. So stakes are high, and then you feel incompetent because it's not something that you're doing a lot, right? So even in my first and second and third business, I didn't know what I was doing, right? And you clearly have this sense that it's important, and customers react to price, and you think a lot about it, but it's really sort of not knowing sort of how to deal with it. And I think part of the issue is that you kind of know what the ingredients are, but you don't know how to make the dish, right? So it's okay, so it has something to do with value for customers, and it has something to do with competitors, and it has something to do with, all these things. And you kind of have all these ingredients, but what you lack is a process or recipe to sort of turn it into something that works. It doesn't taste awful. And so that's why it feels hard, I guess.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the stakes are really high. What is the real cost of getting pricing wrong?
So my first business, I said it was a real estate media business, but we actually monetized by selling conference tickets. So we would launch all these events and we would sell tickets to them. I think sort of the first price point we had was like $400 a ticket. And then it's like, okay, let's try and make it $500. And then I made it $500 and I just made 25% more money. So that was great. And then I said, okay, let's make it $600. And then I made $600. And then suddenly that was too high and I started my conversion rate dropped. So I went back to 500 and I was happy. And then, build that business. And then just as I was sort of ramping up to sell it, I got this idea that I would basically have like an all you can eat, like a membership card, because we had a lot of events. And so I had just launched that kind of membership card, which was like, hey, it was like 3,000, 4,000 a year. And then people could attend all the events they wanted. And then I sold the business basically based on the original model. But the new owner then took this membership model and basically tripled the business with it. So I was sitting on like, it was the same product, but I just had the wrong model. And I was just looking at the price point, like going from 400 to 500 and trying to go to 600 and then back again and thinking I was doing pricing when I was sort of missing the point that it really was in the model and the way I was selling my product where the money was, right? So it can be, for me, it was a 3x difference in that first business. And I think a lot of my clients are sitting on like similar gold mines, just not knowing it.
So interesting. And so I know a lot of founders will get started, like you have your first product that's going to markets. You probably looked at a bunch of competitors. You looked at other conferences in your sector and you were like, the average ticket size is 300, 400, 500 bucks. Why do so many founders copy competitors or pick numbers that feel safe instead of, I guess, thinking through like, how does this scale? What's the like most value I could get out of pricing that works for me?
I think there are two answers to it. One is that it's a really hard question. So we'd rather do something we're good at. So we do product, we do sales, whatever it is so you don't have to do pricing. So that's sort of the simple answer. And I think the other answer is that like a lot of founders sort of implicitly has this idea that price doesn't matter, right? So if I double my price, I'll have half the sales, so I'll be back where I started. Like, so some people have this like idea that, if I lower prices, I'll get more customers, but if I raise them, I'll get less. Basically, it's like, regardless of what direction I go, it's just going to offset itself. So I'll just pick something and then I'll worry about something else. And I think until you really realize that you can take literally the same business and really like 5 or 10x the result, you start to realize, like it does matter. It doesn't cancel out. So I think, so there's so I work with a lot of, I'll give you an example. Like when I started to build my consultancy business, actually a lot of former clients came to me and say, hey, we realized this when you were helping us. We actually want to come do this because it was such a transformational experience to see it in my own business. Wow. Now I'm sort of moved on, right? So it's one of these things where until you sort of really see it and believe it, you don't believe it, right? So I think, it's hard and I don't know how to do it, so I'll leave it. And the other thing is, I haven't seen it yet, so I don't believe it.
So interesting. And okay, so I want to go right into the weeds. And I just want to say to everyone on this call, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. If they apply to what we're talking about, then I will take them directly. Otherwise, we'll take them at the end. But I want to start kind of from the beginning. If you're starting pricing from scratch, what's the very first thing that you should figure out?
What you're doing for customers. So basically, let me give you an example. So when we are doing pricing, we actually never start with pricing. We always start with packaging. So we always say, okay, so what is the outcome of the job to be done that you do for the market that they have demand for, right? And so because nobody ever has demand for like bits and buttons and features, but people have demand for like a change in their condition or their life or their business. They want to make more money, get more leads, or have happier employees or whatever it is, right? So that's really what you're delivering. And the product is just a delivery mechanism. So really you want to take the packaging and just say, okay, so we're going to deliver that outcome. And until you have that, pricing is never going to be really good because it's the outcome that has the value. And if you're not clear about the outcome, you really don't know how to price. And then any outcome, let's say happy employees, you then basically just going to figure out, okay, so how do we measure that? Is that like employee NPS or is it number of employees, whatever it is? And then you're already starting to have something that if it can be measured, it can also be multiplied with a number and then you can price it, right? So it's like it starts with that outcome and then it builds into sort of, okay, so how do we then quantify that outcome? and then you can sort of start building a pricing model on it. So that's sort of from like a design perspective, you should think about pricing. But I think the other aspect is if you're just starting a business, you should sort of give yourself a break on pricing in like for the first, let's say 1, 2, 3 million euros, right? So any business starting out basically should realize that the point in the beginning is just to learn, right? So I usually call that the hustle phase. So I say until you hit like a couple of million of euros, just approach the market with pricing in a very sort of experimental fashion. Like sell like 10 different pricing models and price points to 10 different customers. And then like do it again with the next 10. And then sort of figure out what works. And then at the back end of it, you can say, okay, so this worked really well, this not so much, and so forth. And then you'll be able to sort of like cut away what doesn't work and keep what does. And that then gets you to, let's say, 10 or 15 million. And then at that point, you need to be like a little bit like tighter with like operating procedures and everything else. But starting out is just hustling.
Okay. So first you start with like, what actually are people buying? Or like, what is the demand that we're trying to fill here with our product? And then from there, and then in the early days, it's like another like iterative product that you are testing. So when you're going through that testing phase, like what is the range of prices that you are going to be selling? And like what happens if your customers are like, well, Joe over there got it for half price? Like, I guess, how do you think through in those early days, how to manage that and how to like validate or invalidate your hypotheses about pricing?
So I would say realize first of all that it's not about the number, it's about the structure. Right? So if you think about plane tickets, for example, right? So they don't make money because they try to sort of optimize for the economy ticket. They make money because they have a first class, a business class, a premium economy, and a sandwich, and like a boarding fee and a bag fee and all the like. So it doesn't really matter that the economy ticket is whatever, $120. It matters that the whole structure is in place, and then they have all these numbers that they can then move around and sort of see what works, right? So you should really be curious about, okay, what's kind of like, what is my ticket? Like, should I have a first class? Should I have like a bag fee? Like, how does it work? And then the numbers will be they will be easier to figure out once you have the correct structure in place. So worry less about the numbers. They can come later. And right, so you can change them later. Like, I'm guessing a lot of you have like ongoing subscription relationship with your clients. So just like whatever, sell it for 10, and then if you charge like 100 next year, like good. But the really it is what you charge the 10 for today that makes the most sense to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you figure out, I guess, so the big question is like, what are your customers willing to pay? And so when you're trying to price the need, right? So when you mentioned like employee happiness as an example, how are you thinking through like what the value is to the business? Are you like doing, I don't know, customer discovery? Are you like deep in research? Are you benchmarking against other competitors? Like, how are you thinking through that?
All of that. So basically you want to triangulate, right? You also say, okay, so what are the alternatives? What is the internal business value? And you just have to break it down. So what does it mean to have unhappy employees? Well, they might be less productive. You might have employee turnover. So that costs money to replace and to train and sort of all these things. You sort of figure out, and then you can definitely have some sort of sense of what others charge. Maybe your solution is better or worse. And you'll then figure out, okay, maybe we're for like small customers. What alternatives do they have? You just like, you pick a number, that's fine. And then, so what I'll then do usually when we validate, so usually whenever we work with clients, we usually first do a design of new pricing and packaging. Then we have a validation phase before we then test it in sales in the market. And the validation phase basically is an interview with some of their customers where we break down the offering in a very sequential manner. And this is a very good exercise for everyone here that basically wants to like talk to customers about pricing. So the way you do it is that you invite them and say, hey, we're thinking about a new way to like package and sort of price our product that we think that you really love, but we really want you to like agree with us before we do it. Otherwise, it's not going to work for either of us. Like, and then you get them on like for 45 minutes. You create a PowerPoint slide or slide deck where the first thing you do is you say, hey, this is the job I solve for you. So you say, we solve employee happiness. And if they're like, whatever, then you probably like, that's your problem. Like then, so you basically want to pause and say, okay, like what, I thought you'd be more excited about this. And then they maybe say, yeah, well, we really like we about like productivity, whatever, right? Okay, so you need to then sort of reposition and so forth. But maybe they say, okay, that's awesome. That's like right where we're like in the market to buy. Employee happiness, great. Then you move on. So it's a staged approach. Like, and the next thing you show them is your packages. So you basically say, we're going to have like the basic employee happiness, and we're going to have advanced employee happiness, and we're going to have a module around the recruiting, and we're going to have one about onboarding, whatever, right? And then this is what's for sale, because you want to be very concrete with customers, saying this is what we can do, this is the service we deliver, these are the features, etc. And then you want to ask, is it clear? Do you understand what I'm trying to sell you? And do you want any of it? Like, is there one of these that is more for you? And if they can say it's perfectly clear, and I'd probably start with basic and do the recruitment thing. Like, great. Then you show them the pricing model. You can say, hey, we're going to price this based on number of employees. Does that seem like a good model to you? We're not saying $10 or $1,000. We're just saying how we price, right?
Yep.
And then they can say, no, that doesn't work because we count it different, whatever. And then you know that you have friction. Or they say, that's perfect. That's actually how we think about it, that you're in the game, right? And then you move on to say, okay, so I was thinking something around $100 per employee. And if they say, okay, then I'm out, then you know you're too high. But they can also say, all right, that's like a bit high, but let's see how it works. That's perfect. That's what you want. That's what I call a yellow light. That's great. And of course, if they say, oh, that sounds great, then you're too low, right?
Yep.
But what they're also going to do at this point is that they're going to say, before they can say if the price is high or low, they have to find a reference point. They have to compare it to something, right? Yeah. So no number is high or low in itself. So if you say $100 and they say, oh, that seems high, you say, how do you reach that conclusion? Like, why do you say it's high? And they might say, oh, this other software, HR software, I'm only paying $10, or I only have a $7 budget. Or they might say, I'm actually not, like, it's not that big of a problem for me, whatever, right? So, and then you know what you're competing against. Or if they say, oh, that's perfect because, a trend employee for us is like $20,000.
And then you're like, 100's so cheap. Yeah.
The 100 is so cheap. And now the reference point is different because you're always actually competing to the reference point. Yeah. And actually not to something else. So you use the structure basically to say, okay, packaging, check, that's fine. The pricing model per employee, check, that's fine. Price point, what's the reference point? Can I use this somehow to my advantage? And do I have the right reference point? And if you do your investigation and validation this way, you will know where the problem is. Yeah. Like if they don't understand your product, they will tell you. And then if they don't understand your product, it doesn't matter what your price is because they'll be confused, right?
Yeah.
So if they don't understand your packaging, you're going to just like fix that before you show them any price model.
That's so interesting because I think, and I saw a question from Timothy who's here about whether like how you test prices on a landing page or something like that. But I actually think that it's very illuminating to think about in the early days of your pricing to go through a deck like this that like doesn't list prices, but is really evaluating like what do they think we do? Like, what do they think like other people in the market do? What do they think this problem is worth? Like, what are they benchmarking it against, like their budgets or the problem cost or like number of people or whatever it is. And then numbers like get a little bit clearer, and at least in terms of ballpark range.
Yeah, because if you do split testing on a website, for example, like the implicit assumption is that you already have all the structural elements right, and you're just worried about the price point. And if you have all this right, then you basically split test or like there's different ways you could do it in a sales context. But then that's fine. Then you're just optimizing something. But you should really figure out, like with my first business, if you even had the right model, like are you selling individual tickets or are you selling a membership? And that's really that's hardest to split test, right? And you can just have like a qualitative conversation with customers about that. And then once you have the right model, then you can optimize the hell out of it. But don't just go to optimization because you don't know how to find the right model.
Right. No, it's so interesting and such a good change of reference in terms of framing. And so if you already have pricing, how do you know when it's time to revisit it?
So, well, because it's Monday again, right? So
it's another day.
Yeah, so a little bit tongue in cheek. So there are different ways to do it. So it's basically, if you're a good rule of thumb is, it's something like the average of your like major product cycle and your sales cycle. So if you have like a sales cycle of 3 months and your product, you release new like major product, let's say 2, 3, 4 times a year, you probably want to look at it like on a 3 to 6 months rolling basis, right? Because the product cycle is when things change, and the sales cycle is when you learn, right? So you basically have these two that influences each other, and then you do that. I would say at the minimum once a year, there's very strong data to suggest that if you do it 4 times a year on an ongoing basis, like data suggests that the businesses grow a lot faster, do a lot better. So it's like, okay, so it's just like more is actually more in this sense here.
Yeah.
Okay? So, but at least once a year, and don't just do, oh, we do 5%, so we do pricing. Like actually revisit it, like as a new business proposition. And it might be the best thing you do all year, and for almost like the least amount of work. So like take care to do it well. So then when you revisit pricing, you basically want to place yourself into one of two buckets, right? You want to say, okay, are we doing something like major and transformational, where we like change the packaging structure and the segments we sell to, and like a new pricing model, like instead of price per user, we price per whatever, satellite, something else, right? That's transformational. It requires more work, validation, et cetera, et cetera. Or are we just doing like optimization, where we're just changing the numbers around, maybe canceling some discounts and all these things, right? And then, so you shouldn't do transformation work like every Monday, right? So that happens like when new major product comes around, or competition appears, buy another company and integrate it, something like that. So that is sort of, or when something gets really stale and you just like have a feeling that the market is like should respond better compared to what you do. That's when you do transformation work. But all the other work, that should be like a normalized part of like running a business, and something that you have your eye on a quarterly basis at least.
Okay. And when you think about the non-transformational work, so we added a new feature to our existing product, the value of that feature, I guess I'm sure if it's a giant organization, some product manager has priced this out. If it's a smaller organization, maybe not. How would you think about those like smaller pricing conversations, and like who's in the room, like what are we doing, how long does it take, like what's happening?
So usually this is not something that you like. If it's less than 10 million euros a year, it's basically like a founder owner led decision, right? So you have like a senior person who like is good at that and just runs that. But it's usually like it's a top level management thing.
Yep.
When you go to like 30 million plus, like it can get a little bit more like organizational, right? So you can start to have committees, and you can have annual wheels and so forth. So, but when you're less than 10 million, just like you'll know when something like feels out of whack. Like it's either like, okay, we're not selling this, so it's just not working. We thought it was like awesome, and the market disagrees. That's the problem. Or it's like, hey, we think it's awesome, and customers are buying it, but they just don't want to pay for it. Like, but they're getting a ton of value. So there's like a mismatch between like we're delivering like 1 million of value, and they want to pay us pennies. So it's like, okay, so then we need to do something again, and then you get cracking at it. But for the normalized decisions, I would say have senior management own it. Never let it be sales. So that is sort of whatever you do, don't let it be sales. And the reason is that it's almost by default sales, because they're the ones who use pricing as a tool.
Yep.
But sales are also the one who have the most emotional attachment to the pricing.
Yeah.
And they are exposed to what I call asymmetric information. That means they never hear that it's too cheap, and they always hear it's too expensive.
Yeah.
And it's just really, really hard for someone to just like consistently ignore like a very like clear signal, right? So if people tell you like 10 times a day that something is too expensive, it's just hard to just like sit down and say it's just too cheap. Like it just feels difficult as a human being.
Yeah.
So you want to sort of, you don't want to have sales run that, because even if they say it's too cheap, they often don't know how much too cheap it is. They'll do like, oh, we're going to be brave and we're going to do like a 20% increase, and they should just have done like a 200% increase.
Right.
So they just,
yeah.
Yeah. It's one of these things where you just want someone who has that distance a little bit to the actual commercial negotiations with customers, who can then go in and say, "Hey, this is what's happening." Which in smaller businesses that are founder related is hard because the founder usually is also involved with the sales.
Yep.
So yeah, so we do a lot of like cleanup work at like 10, 20, 30 million dollar businesses because of that. But if you made it to that point, it's fine, and you get to fix it at some point. So don't sweat it too much, right? But and until that, it just is you own that problem, right?
And to that point, and I see a couple of people asking this question in the chat. So Emily and Arena were asking about services businesses, and I know that's a little bit outside of what you do, but their question also applies to like sales-led businesses as well. Mm-hmm. They wanted to know, how much should you keep like your standard pricing versus like a custom price package, and how do you think through that?
So it has to do with for any business. So I specialize in B2B SaaS because it's like riches and niches. It's better to just be good at one thing than trying to be sort of good at 1,000. But for any business, I would say, so what's wrong with this bespoke pricing is that it just really scales not that well, right? So if you have 100 customers with 100 different prices, and maybe even 100 different products, because they got this feature and they didn't want that, whatever it is, then suddenly in a software business, you get a ton of technical debt, and your finance department hates you because they have to send all the invoices and do all these things. And whenever you have renewal of contracts, it's just a nightmare because everybody has to remember what the deal was with this particular customer. And when you have a salesperson leave, then it's a tragedy because nobody knows what the implicit all this, right? Yeah. I call this commercial debt. So it's basically the same as technical debt. It's just this variance in the commercial part of the business where you have all the customer relationships, and that's just not scalable. Yeah. It means that you have a ton of operational drag and costs in just managing the existing book of business. So you see a lot of businesses just like grow really well to like 5, 10, 15 million, and then you just hit a wall because suddenly all the oxygen is sucked out of the room because you have to spend all your resources just managing the existing portfolio of business you have. So that's commercial debt. So the idea is that you basically want to do the hustle phase, 1 to 3 million, where commercial debt is not necessarily, like you just want to live. So you just do whatever you want. Then you clean up a little bit, and then you want to scale to like 10, 15 million with not too much commercial debt. It's impossible to, like, you're going to have strategic customers. You're going to have a few that you just need to sell on that special like deal of love that you have to make. And that's fine. But make like 80%, 90% of all business within a standardized model, like more or less. That's going to feel messy, but it's not unmanageable. And then when you get to sort of 15 million or so, that's where you really like crank a model, and you just like, you reel in the salespeople and say, this is the contract we signed, this is the model we have, and anything else is just canceled straight away. And then you can scale to 100, right? So that's really sort of like at a high level, the overall blueprint you have. But the what you should think about is that any kind of concession that is out of the norm and is bespoke for this client is a little like friction point that you just have to pay over and over and over again whenever that customer is around. And it just stacks, right? So it's really, if they don't, especially if it's like it's a customer that wants to pay less and not more, it just becomes like it really can suck the life out of a business, right? So incur debt with caution.
That is a really good way to put it. And I know that in services businesses, there's a lot of different ways to charge too. And some people have like, okay, this is our like standard offering. In our plus offering, here's the list of options. It's like still like quite time box. Like the contracts like are still very, very tight.
But I run a service business, right? So it's not, and I've sort of tried to sort of figure it out and go along and all these things. And so it's this. So first of all, same thing. The money is in the structure, not actually the price point. You should worry about packaging before you worry about anything and so forth. Like all the same things apply. And then you basically want to sort of figure out, okay, so how do you then get paid well for the service? And I would also say that I think services are a extremely underutilized weapon for software businesses. Like there's no software business that can't grow like 30% with just like getting services right. Yep. Because services basically, they create trust in the software. So you have like awesome customer success, awesome onboarding, awesome everything else. People just want to pay more for the software. Also, your conversion rate goes up. Your like NPS scores go like people love you more, like they refer more, they churn less, like everything gets better with services. And actually also, if you start charging for services, you make money. That's great. But also your people now start to take it seriously, right? So you have a customer success person and you say, hey, like whenever you talk to a customer, I'm going to send them an invoice for 200 euros an hour. They're suddenly going to prepare a little bit more. They're going to show up with like nicer clothes. Like they're going to be more professional with that customer, which is what you want, right? So it has this positive feedback loop where whenever you take services seriously, then suddenly everything just like is better for you.
Yeah. I think that's like an important piece of wisdom to hear. I want to talk a little bit about this like emotional component too. When someone realizes that they've been undercharging and then they realize that they have to raise prices, how do you communicate a price increase to a customer?
So depends a little bit on what, so anything what I would call like these sort of maintenance, like small optimization, like 15%, you just send them an email and wish them have a good day. Like no need to, you can do a little bit of, hey, this is what we've done for you lately. This is what we're going to do like next year. And then that's fine. And then you just ship it. Don't overthink it. Like literally, if this takes you more than 3 hours, you're doing it wrong. Like just get it done.
Yep.
So the transformational stuff when you're doing like major price increases. And so for context, I'd say that I think we haven't done the math actually for last year, which is a problem. But for the years prior, the average price increase that we executed for clients and projects was 242%. So we do transformational like price increases. So it's not. So we've done like 600%, 800, like all these. Take your pick, like 2,000%. So when you're doing something like that, it's naturally a new deal in some way. Like you sort of have to say to customers, okay, whatever we were before, we're not tomorrow. So the way you do that is basically you construct a narrative in the following way. The first section is that you create a burning platform. So you say, hey, we've been in business for 10 years. We're happy to serve you. We're trying to solve this insert job to be done, like employee happiness, whatever it is. But, we're now, and then you start to sort of create burning platform issues. Like we've been charging not enough. And we've been charging very differently. So we have same customers with different prices. We fundamentally believe that's morally unfair to customers. And also we see that we're not priced right to the market. And also we see that we don't have the resources in the business to really pursue the vision of this product with what we have. So we're going to change something. So all you're doing is you're just saying there is no way where we're not going to change prices.
Right. We are doing this.
We're doing this, right? So you can't talk us off the cliff. Okay. Next section of the communication is what you're going to do. So you're going to say, hey, the way we're going to do this is we're going to change the packaging. We're going to change the pricing model from whatever per user to like NPS difference in employees and so forth. And it's going to be awesome. And we're going to go in this direction. So it's basically like green fields and sunshine and future and all these things and a great new value proposition where it's basically more for more. Like we're going to give you a ton of new product and value and we're going to change the way to something that's better, which because you did the validation, so customers like it. And then you can say, and that means that pricing is going to be X. And then you can have third section, which is your special deal. So if X is like 3,000%, we can say, hey, your special deal
is 2,000%.
We're going to ramp you up is to ramp you up to 3,000% over 3 years.
Okay.
And you might also say, by the way, competitors, which we sold in the last 6 months, have been paying these prices. So you say, we just tested it in the market. Everybody else has been happy to pay this. It's basically you that's a little cheap and you've been like on the cheap for 5 years.
Yeah.
And even compared to other customers. So like the party is over. And we realize this is a shock, so we're going to be nice to you and sort of phase it in over 2 or 3 years. So this is how you do the massive price increases. And you can do some churn risk analysis and competitor mystery shopping and a ton of other things. But from a communication perspective, that's the kind of structure you want to build around the message.
That's really interesting and really firm and very, very clear. In the case when you lower prices, how do you communicate about that to your existing clients who are paying more? And how do you make it seem like this was a very intentional decision to get more customers and not because like you're nervous or going out of business or something like this?
So I would never lower prices. I would sell a new product for less, right? Technically, it can be the same thing, right? But you have some, let's say, you have some small differences, whatever, in like the legacy model, which is whatever 100, and the new thing is 50. So, and then you're just going to have to figure out in your actual case, if your old customers like call you on it and say, hey, like I also want the new thing, you probably have to let them, right? But that's how it is. And I would say, usually actually what we do when you have, let's say you have 1,000 customers, when we actually when I say we raise prices to 242%, it's actually not that we do that for all the customers. It's usually it's more surgical. So it's going to be like, there's going to be some customers where we 10x it, and then there's other customers where we might actually lower the price a bit and so forth. But on an aggregate level, like the outcome is an increase, right? So you basically always want to look at your customers on smaller segments. You can do like small, medium, large, or you can do whatever, recruitment companies versus whatever factories, whatever your segmentation is, and say, hey, are these different, right?
Yep.
And I would say, like the rule of thumb for anyone out there, if you have a B2B SaaS product and you have below 8% annual churn, you have serious pricing power. You just have. So I have a business that I'm talking to right now. They have 35 million or so ARR, and they have 2% annual churn, which is nothing, right? So I'm saying you are sitting on $150 million business.
Yeah.
You just are. And the only thing between now and then is just like execution, right? And that's also an emotional journey, actually, back to your question.
Yeah.
But for that founder.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think there's something about like, are we doing right by our clients? Like, what happens if we get fewer clients? What happens if it doesn't go well? Like, I'm sure there's a lot of emotional management also in what you do.
So I had a CEO that I was coaching, I think, a year and a half ago, and he was about to sort of, I think, 8 of his accounts, and they had like a very bespoke business. They had been doing business for 20 years, and he had a very close. It was actually like, it was a small country, so everybody knew each other. And so it's one of these where he was like, we live in the same city, like, there's just all this, like, so it was, and then basically, so we done all the math, and it was just clear that, so basically, like, we'd been speaking for an hour and said, look, they're going to like you less, but they're going to respect you more, right? And fundamentally, you just need to be okay with that, right? And then the like you less part, that will wear over. Like, if they respect you, then they're going to like you again when you, in the next couple of years, show them that you mend it and that you're going to deliver more value, right?
Yeah.
So, but you can do it with respect when you do something like this, and that actually is the like major driver in a good relationship with your customers. You shouldn't try to be liked; you should be respected, and it should be a sort of a fair and equitable exchange.
Yep.
If you're selling way too cheap, there's actually a lack of respect in that relationship, and it's your job to fix it.
Yep. Absolutely. And I actually think this is a great time to open to questions. And we've been getting a lot of questions. So Kamal, I'm actually going to bring you up here. Hey, Kamal, do you want to ask your question to Ulrik?
Yeah, actually, I had two questions.
Well, let's start with the most recent one about the market share.
Yeah. I was wondering again, because I'm in the middle of trying to release a new product. I'm just still in the business plan stage. But however, so when I'm coming to the financial part, so I was wondering a little bit of if the relation of the between the business model and the pricing, which I think you mentioned at the beginning. You even stated this, and again the value of the product. That was another question. How can I, kind of estimate the value, and what's the best practice to interpret or reflect it on my pricing of my products, and whether is entering into the market as a low price just to get some market share, especially when you are new in the market, would be a recommended strategy, or it could be, so those are the three questions I have. Thank you.
So I would say, so the first part of the question, as I understood it, Kamal, was like, how do I figure out what the pricing is and how do I connect to the business model? So I would actually say the recommendation I gave before, like the structure of these validation interviews, you can do that before you build the product. And I actually sort of recommend that to a lot of my corporate clients who are trying to take products. I have corporate clients that, like, they plan product launches in like 3 years time. And then they say, okay, let's just like figure out like roughly what the model is going to be and just talk to customers now, like from a packaging perspective, pricing model, price point, get all these things in line. And then we get feedback, and that might actually inform what product we even build. Like, so if they don't care about employee satisfaction, but they care about productivity, like that's important to know before we build it, right? So this is sort of the kind of insight that you're looking for. And then, as I said, focus more on the right model and that not too much on the price point. If you figure out, okay, this is going to be priced per active employee or whatever, and not something else, that's really sort of the kind of insight that you want up front. And then when you're launching products, if you're really unsure, then the best thing you can do is to just admit it and say, hey, I'm going to know more in a year. I'm going to know more in 3 years. So what I should definitely not do is sign these crazy ironclad contracts with customers where I don't get to change anything, right? So in the beginning, basically you say, like, we're going to do this model, and then I get to like change it next year, and you get to churn. That's fine. But like this is the learning experience. So I usually say that if you're selling a software product, the point is that it's going to develop and change. So you actually don't know what you're going to sell your customers in 3 years. So how do you know what to price them? And how do they know that any price is like right? Because nobody knows what the actual product is 3 years from now. Like, no. So it doesn't make sense. So you basically say, let's figure it out now, and then we'll figure it out again next year. So you get to sort of have that iterative approach to pricing with your account. So that actually enables you to create these, like just update the pricing. Oh, 10, okay, let's do 20 next year, let's do 25, and then you'll sort of figure it out as you go along. Okay, the last question was, does it make sense to go in low to get market share? Almost never. People underestimate the attractiveness of a low price. In a very, very known category where you have extremely clear like value exchanges and people basically get to buy dollars for pennies, like in some way, yes, pricing matters a lot. The more commoditized, the better. But if you have complex propositions, it usually doesn't help. So here, what you want to optimize for is, how do I best fund my sale, right? So if you charge 500 because you think it's better than 1,000 from a conversion point of view, suddenly you also have like half the resources to sell the thing. Mm-hmm. So you need to sort of figure out, okay, so if you charge 1,000 and I just like spend twice as much time calling customers, would I sell more? And the answer is probably yes, right? So usually I see actually that premium prices win more when you're testing markets out, because whenever you actually do win accounts, you just have more resources to build new product, to get more sales, to do all these things. So the unit economics matter a lot.
So you shift a little bit towards the marketing, you mean? So just whatever, so you can have more flexibility in increasing your marketing efforts, if I understood right.
Yeah. So I have a service business. I have close to double prices every year for 8 or 10 years. Right. And so you do the math, right? So you should close in on 8 figures before I went on solo, right? And so my problem is just like, I just wanted extremely good unit economics for my client. I'm happy to just serve 8 clients a year. That's fine, right? So that means that you need to sell it differently. You need the value proposition to be different. You need to listen to customers in a different way. Like, so there's a lot of things that go into it. And I couldn't have done that on day one, but I could build it over time. And so I think really having a low cost approach is a very specialized skill that requires very special conditions in your market to really pay off. And if you're not sure that that's the right play, it probably isn't. And you should just try to have a good, solid, value-based price for what you sell, and then learn from there.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kamal.
Yeah, thanks.
Timothy, I'm going to bring you on because I know you had a couple of questions. Well, I'm going to find you somewhere in here. Can you raise your hand, Tim? And I will get you here.
Yeah. I'm here.
Oh, here you are. Okay, I see you. I'm adding you.
Am I on?
Yeah, you're here. Welcome.
Really? This is brilliant. You're brilliant. This is like, my world is architecture and creativity, but I'm trying to sell information products that help with developing people's capabilities that really can't be automated or systemized or AI infused away. And so I have a difficult time trying to price the value of what people can get, but it's highly dependent on someone's engagement with the learning content. And I always feel like I need to handhold them to sort of apply it into their specific projects. So I'm curious with like, when you sell kind of that one-to-many course model,
What's the
the
price
down
point
is
of the
always how do
courses?
people apply it. What?
What's the price point of the courses, like roughly?
I was originally doing $497 for the course, and then I've been trying to pivot towards a $597 membership model that has one course plus service to help bridge that gap. And then I was going to diversify the product offerings over time, and people just get access
That's what
as
you need to
they
do.
stay.
You need to have a premium product. So you need so here's what like rough. I don't know so your product that much, but I would probably create some sort of like a almost like an intensive thing that costs like 2, 3, 4, 5,000, like upfront, and then tag the membership model on the back. So basically say, hey, I have this like small starter product for like $500, and then I have like the big like premium college creativity thing for like 5,000, and then there's like a yearly membership on the back end with a lot of love and a mastermind and stuff like that, right? And then basically you try to then you use sort of the first one to then basically has a feeder channel to sort of upsell them into the second one, right? So basically you run all your paid ads on the small course. Whenever people transact, you basically call them like 5 minutes in, and you try to sort of upsell them to the larger thing, and then that's your feeder channel. So basically, again, you're trying to value the price point on one thing, and you really should like split your customer segment into like the 500, and then the 5K customers, right?
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to figure out like how do you talk to the value, like because people always say you got to speak to the transformation, speak to the value before you set the price point and do all the segmentation. So I get stuck on the messaging of that because it's so dependent on people's willingness to engage.
Talk to customers, like talk to customers until you figure it out. And so either they're getting jobs or they're getting like some sort of personal satisfaction or mastery or whatever. So there's usually some either qualitative gain or like a monetary gain or both, right? And you basically just want to pick your avatar, right? So I met a guy in the US that did basically like IT coding skills. He did maybe 10, 15 million a year on that. And basically it was just like, we're going to get you a job. And then there was a lot of services around job applications and like guarantees around that. So he was just very targeted of what it was. And then the way we're going to get your job is like, we're going to learn you how to code. Like, so, but that was almost like secondary. So you need to sort of figure out that why at the end of it, like, why are you teaching them these things? Or why are they trying to learn these things? And then that's where you sell them.
Okay.
So they buy holes, not drills.
Validating.
Yeah.
No problem. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Bhavjeet, I'm going to bring you up here. All right.
Hi, a very good session. Thank you for arranging this. And thank you for coming on as guest to teach us about pricing. So I am an aesthetic doctor. So UK is very unregulated. I know this may not relate to a lot of people. UK regulation is very bad. And for last few years, they have allowed even non-doctors to do certain treatments that only doctors are doing for a long time. Now, what has happened, because they are beauticians and they have a lot of walk-in and walk-through clients coming in, they have decreased their prices a lot. So for the same treatment, they are doing it for half a price, and we are not able to afford it. So the problem is we are losing our existing customers going to them. We have so much of outgoing, and I am a doctor and they are beauticians who have not trained for 8 years. I'm a doctor for 33 years. Now, the problem is I have pressure from my therapists who work in the clinic to bring the prices down, and the receptionist, because when they pick up the phone, they say, oh, no, you're too costly. Our existing patients are with us. They are not going away. But the new patients are not coming in because they don't know us. So that's the big problem. It's not the existing patients. It's the new patients who call up, what is the cost of this treatment? Because down the road, the beauticians is giving for this much.
Yeah. So I think you're in a positioning problem, right? So you're in a commoditized market and you haven't articulated the extra value that you might be able to bring. And even if like what you actually do is the same as the rest, and this just like they actually provide the same quality, they're just cheaper. So you either have to have like a brand around what you do that enables you to charge more, or you need to just position yourself in the market and say, hey, we're actually going to like increase prices to like 3x and just target a different customer group and service them in a way where like there's a lot of customers that wouldn't want to go to the cheap beautician clinics. Like they would never be like spotted there, right? So they actually want something that is 5, 10, 20x the price, and they want that experience around that. They want to sort of have the like sense of certainty and security that the quality is good and so forth. And I think actually, especially in your kind of marketplace and beauty, you have this very, very wide range of prices for basically the same services, right? But it's all the services around the core service. Like, so if you do whatever injections and something, it's more at, do you get the coffee? How does the clinic look? Like how is the phone service? Like all these things that make people feel special that they really pay like 5-10x for, right? So I think you need to sort of figure out if you can make that premium move, and then you just need to take like a holistic look at the business and just make it look premium, like from end to end, from like the first like click on it on like a marketing ad or whatever through their sort of offboarding when you call them and ask if they're happy like 3 weeks after, whatever your process is, right? And if you can make it feel premium, there's definitely a market for you, especially in the UK still.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we can probably take one more question. If anyone has one, hold on. Okay. If not, I have more questions. Don't worry. Okay, so wait, Zishan has one. He's coming. Okay, you're on stage, Zishan.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi guys. How are you? Right, just a quick one. It's not a question that I'm gonna have, it's just a clarity. So I just put a note as well in the chat. So a price change can be looked at pretty much similar to a GTM. So
what do you mean similar to go to market?
Go to market. So looking at it from holistically in order to make sure that you've captured all the touch points, whether you're going to increase it, what's going to be the feedback, or is it going to fire back, whether they're going to reduce it, it's going to be hitting you some other ways. So what's the best way moving forward? Now, does that resonate, or it's a complete different approach?
So usually I say that you have like the full commercial model of your business. The way I think about it is like it's 4 models. So you have a pricing model, and then you have a product model, then you have an acquisition model, like a way to get customers, sales, marketing, all this, like leads, conversion, all that. And then you have a service model, how you actually sort of service, upsell, expand, and all these things, right? And so the outcome, the money you make, is going to be based on the like positive interaction between these 4 models, right? Mm-hmm. So you can have 3 of them work brilliantly, and then the 4th one sucks, and then you still don't do that well, right? So you basically want to solve for like lowest denominator and like most synergy between these 4. So basically sometimes we find people have really good pricing. It's just like they're trying to push it through the wrong channel, right? Mm. So they have like a really cool enterprise pricing, but their sales partners, the resellers don't understand it, right? So it doesn't work, right? So it can be something like that. So I think it's really just, you just want to have like a good fit between these parts of your business. That's really what's going to create the results.
Pretty much, yeah. Right. Thanks, man. Cheers.
Sure. Okay. And then actually, I think we maybe have time for one quick. Nick Evans, I'm going to bring you on. Quickest question, and then we will wrap it up and let Ulrik live.
Hello. Yes. Yeah, thank you so much. Really, really helpful. We are struggling to figure out exactly, I think the challenge is if we increase our price, then the competition we have a little bit like what was being discussed earlier, we think will come in and swoop, because we've got our position in the market right now, primarily because I think we're seen as like, it's worth, rather than building what we have themselves, it's like paying us for our thing. So there's this kind of fear that like we could do it and people would start to pay, but then we'd have this potentially massive churn off the back of it. Is there like a point in some markets where you think build versus buy constrains the potential price increase?
Sure. So build versus buy is more an issue when in an initial sale and not in repricing existing customers, right? But still you could find ways around this and so forth. So I would say that, so I work with a lot of like very, very large private equity funds that own companies for a long time. And what we see is that when we raise prices significantly, I think they define it as more than 30%, we do see a short term, like 1-2 year increase in. What's interesting is that churn then drops back to normal levels, often below, right? Basically, you now get better customers, you have more resources to serve customers, everything else, right? So like it just nets out to more money, right? So usually these fears are overstated, right? So yeah. And then so it helps, by the way, to have a conversation with customers around it if you increase prices. So you say, hey, we're charging you 100 today, we're going to charge you 300 tomorrow, but we're going to spend a lot of that extra 200 to build all this stuff for you and like fulfill the mission of the product. And then they're like, okay, like let's hang out for a few years to see if, you know, you're true to your word. And then if you are, they're going to be happy, right? So I wrote a newsletter yesterday that said every customer wants you to 10x your prices. Like, and logically they do, because the implicit assumption is that to 10x your prices, you need to like 20x the value, right? So if you put it like that, like we agree that we want to go forward together, right? So the idea is that I want to take you to like 10 million a year, some sort of client, right? And in order to do that, I need to make you like $1 billion a year. Like if we could get that to happen, maybe like in some future state, wouldn't that be great? Yes. Like, and then that is a given, even sort of besides the facts. And then you just know that, okay, now we're just going to figure out how, not if, right? And then that's basically the journey that you want to take them on. It helps. Yeah.
Very clear. And we are at the hour. So Ulrik, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to add before we sign off?
So I'm going to post this in the chat here. community.pricingsas, one word, pricingsas.com. It's a great pricing community. It's not run by me. It's run by two guys, John and Rob. I founded the community, gave it to them. They're much better community managers. There's a ton of discussions around pricing. I pop by every now and again and answer questions, and it's great. It's a great starting point to just learn from other operators.
Amazing. That is so generous. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom. This was really brilliant.